Hello, my friends. Welcome back to another story in the life of the old time rock and roller. Today, I'm here with my friend Paul Tiny Lister. That we first made our professional debut 50 years ago on New Year's Eve at the Harrisville Civic Center in Pascoag, Rhode Island.
Oh my gosh, you're
We
right.
we made $40. We were called the Seagram Seven because it took all seven of us to pull it off. And I believe on the lineup was you, me, John Holscher, Ed Riccio, who was a drummer that I auditioned, who wasn't that great, but he had a driver's license and a fake ID. So while we were waiting for Bob Wiegand's mother to come pick him up, Bob started playing the piano in my parlor. And I said, "Whoa, you're the piano player." So Bob was on the gig. And I think, was there another singer named Brad Dawson or
Oh no, Brian Dawson was the
the
drummer
drummer? And he had the funeral home where we practiced
up
it.
in Cumberland. Yes, with bodies all around. So,
Yeah, that was really freaky.
and I also remember the person that kind of got us up there was a woman named at the time Liz Cluck.
Liz Cluck, I remember her name.
Yep, she was the one that was from that part of the world, and she got us up there. It was a great time.
Incredible.
I still have my $5.
You're what?
$5
Oh
from the
yeah.
gig.
Yeah. I if you recall, we would always go to the New York System in
Yes.
North Providence after the gig, and we could get four chili dogs for $1. And I think for an extra quarter would get a Coke. And that would be our after the gig ritual for many years, right?
Yes, indeed.
Um,
I
and
have continued with hot wieners. Every time I make it back to Rhode Island, I get some. So the nice venture back.
Oh, that's super. When we played on that gig, I recall two standout moments. One was Wipeout, where Ed Riccio couldn't play the drum part, the solo, but Bob Wiegand could because he was actually a drummer who his parents had forced him to take piano lessons for 5 years. And so Bob got up and played that part. And then we were doing Walk Don't Run, and John didn't know the chords on the bridge, so he just kind of turned around and went, stand by. And then we went back into the main part, back on A minor, G, F, E.
Oh,
you know.
that's right. It worked. It
it,
worked fine.
it did. And then it was Dick Lassard on that gig.
I think Dick was. Dick was part of the gig at the time, and stayed, I think, with us after we became Oxbow for a bit. But I think it was a very short-lived situation, because it was Dick and I that were with you at Rumstick Point, at your house, when we had the Trifari episode.
Yeah, yeah, yep. Dick also had a car. Might have been a Chevy Impala, and I think he smoked cool cigarettes. He was a heavy smoker.
Well, his car was a Plymouth Fury
It
of
was a
all.
white.
It was a 63 or 64 Plymouth Fury.
Mm,
Um, and it was a nice car because it was his car.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he lived over on Cranston Street. I had the pleasure of going up to his place once, and he had, without a doubt, the largest speaker system in an apartment that I have ever seen in my life. It looked like Hanley Sound System had come in and designed these two monster speakers, and he would crank it up. And boy, I'll tell you, the neighbors weren't happy. But what sound!
Wow.
What sound!
You remember the movie Back to the Future?
Oh, yes.
And Michael J. Fox had that giant amplifier. It sounds like Dick's hi-fi there.
Indeed.
Uh, So I recall the New Year's Eve job ended, and we decided to take a core of people and make a band. And it was Dave Brooks, who was the oldest guy in the band. He was the drummer, and he played in a group from Pawtucket called the Lords. And we
Yes.
and we had no idea why he wanted to be in our group because we didn't know anything, and he had already played out. But his dad was a DJ, I think, on WJAR, sort of a jazz DJ, and he looked like Dennis Mitchell's Mr. Mitchell, Dennis the
Mr. Mitchell, Dennis the Menace's dad, right?
right?
He did.
Uh, and
Had a
then
great voice, always wore a sports jacket.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh, and Dave was always sort of quiet, reserved, sort of like his dad.
Yeah.
Um, Not one to get too wild, sort of the adult of the party in a way.
The father figure of the group. Oh
Yeah,
my
yeah.
God. If he ever knew
And then John Holscher,
Yep,
and we had shared cabins together, I think Appleton and Fisk, because we all met when we were 13 at the Episcopal Conference Center. I
that's right.
think the family courtship and marriage class taught by, I think it was Father Packard. Uh, I don't know if you were in that, but we all cracked up when he said, "Listen, boys, a stiff prick has no conscience." So and we were cracking up, and Bruce McRae was there, and he said, "I he's a hot shit."
Yeah, oh my God. Yeah, and
But
I think Carol Frink may have also co-taught that, but he made that comment when we split up into the guys and the girls. I think
yeah,
that I would assume that that's when that comment was made.
we were like in that part of the house that had the outside wraparound porch.
Yeah.
Um, then we had Bob Wiegand, who I brought in from my hometown. He was a year younger. And what was your take on Bob?
I well, Bob fascinated me. I thought at first he was always putting his glasses from the tip of his nose to the bridge of his nose, and he'd get that funny look on his face. But I realized that he was with you, one of the two really true musicians that were in the group. This kid could play. And I think his folks may have made the right move because I only remember him playing the keyboards. But when he did, people were mesmerized. And it was
Mm,
like you on the guitar. And I said, God, these two guys, that's a good reason just to be in the group.
yeah,
And it was. It
yeah.
was. So that was my take on Bob, but I like Bob an awful lot.
hmm he was really fun to get along with, and he was a funny guy, and it make these sort of Harpo Marx things,
Yep.
and
And he also tended to walk on the balls of his feet when he walked. He kind of had that funny little walk about him. And I said, geez, I wonder what he's like at full speed. I don't think I ever found out, but
yeah,
so
yeah.
much for that.
Oh man, but his dad was an advertising agent for Fram Oil. He had a little bit of money, and he took Bob up to. Uh, there was Jenny and Tony's Rhode Island Music, and right next to it, I think, was Ray Mullins Music Store.
Uh-huh.
And I rode with him, and Bob's dad bought him the Farfisa combo organ, like I don't know the Doors were using or the Rascals
Sure.
or something, a
96 too.
big
Yeah.
Baldwin eliminator amplifier. So we only did a couple of gigs, but there's one we did in Middletown, and there was a piano there, and we had the Shure microphone that Brian Rohde stole from the Coast Guard, and we had that in the thing, and I we used to take my dad's old hi-fi and put a converter plug into it with the microphone for a PA, and then I'd do one with my old Kent guitar and try and get away with that. John actually had a Gibson amp with a 10-inch speaker and a white Gibson Falcon or something. It was pretty good.
Yeah,
He
it was.
His parents owned the greenhouse, right?
Yep.
Holscher's greenhouses.
In Johnston, yeah.
So
Nice family, and he got a nice sister too. She was very
yeah.
sweet.
Mm-hmm. I'd go up there on a Sunday sometime. My mom would drop me off, or a Saturday, and um, we had the John Mayall and the Blues Breakers album with Eric Clapton. We were like, holy smokes! Uh, that
Yeah.
we There was one summer when we were on a break, maybe in the afternoon from our working duties, and we were playing the Rolling Stones' "It's All Over Now." And it had that pretty hot guitar solo in there and everything. And we looked at the credits and it said uh, B. Womack, C. Womack. We thought, who the heck?
Bobby Womack, huh?
And we thought, who are the heck are these guys? Uh, well, years later, I did an album with Bobby Womack, The
Oh,
Road to
no kidding.
Life. And I said, me and my friend, we used to sit with our Stella and Maybell $5 guitars and try and play along to it. And they were such pieces of junk. We'd throw them against the wall sometimes out of frustration. The strings were this far off the neck. But Bobby said, when I first heard those Rolling Stones doing my song, I was really mad. But then when those checks started coming in, I thought, whoa, this is the best thing that ever happened to me.
Great story.
Uh,
Wow.
now you and I were the only pretty much unsupervised children in the band, because you lived with your mom and I lived with my mom, and everybody else had a dad to kind of keep them in line, and
Indeed.
right, and so we kind of could do what we wanted. And I recall you were a volunteer for the North Providence Fire Station.
Wow, what a memory. Yes, I was.
Yeah,
You could do it when you were 14. So I started when I was 14 and I was a volunteer up until I was 19. So
yeah, yeah. That was very impressive. Um,
it was a fun thing to do. It's a good group of people, and I I didn't have a ar, so I always had to run to the fire department. And boy, I'll
right.
tell you, back then I had a lot more weight on. It was a
Yeah.
long run.
When we met, you might have said I'm Paul Lister, but everyone calls me Tiny, because I don't think until you and I hooked up just recently that I had ever called you Paul in my life.
Yeah. I've run into several people who still call me Tiny, and family members on my wife's side knew me as Bees because my middle name was Beasley. So I've got Bees, Tiny, and Paul. So I answer to all.
I know what you mean. I don't know if you ever. I guess there was a guy named Steve Jablecki who was in a group called the Mojo Hands.
I remember the Mojo Hands. Yeah.
And we used to see them playing at Merrill's Lounge, and we thought, wow, that guy's in like high school and he's doing a bar gig. How can we do that? But we were too young, of course.
But we did the fraternity gigs, and the benefits were just as good.
Yeah, yeah, man. The first time I got the call from Sigma Nu, it was April, and it was a Sunday night. And a guy called up and said, "Hey, is this the Oxbow incidents?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, this is Bob from Sigma Nu Fraternity, and we got a party coming up in a month, and 9 to 1, it pays $40. You guys want to do it?" I said, "Sure." And uh, he said, "Okay, great. We'll see you then." And I hung up the phone, and I got to thinking, who the heck knows us? How can somebody? Opened up the phone book back when phone books had numbers. And I said, Sigma Nu. I called him. Is this Sigma Nu? Yeah. Did you just call? Yep. It was legit. So we actually had to practice. What do you remember about some of our weekend practices on Rumstick Point?
I remember it was the great getaway. If we came down on a Friday night, it was like the best weekend of the year, pretty much so. And it happened a number of times. But one of the things that I remembered after you and I started talking again was your mom. I really liked your mom a great deal.
Mhm.
And she was a singer too. And I remember we were trying to get, and I couldn't figure it out, the song New Orleans. And your mom came up to the microphone and she started singing. She said, "You sing with me." And I said, "Okay." And she just belted it out. And she was so sweet about it. And I'm sure I was flat at every corner that could have been. And she just tolerated me. She was just wonderful. So I thought, man, you're a lucky guy.
Yeah,
You are.
yeah.
And
She
your sister, the other thing I
Kathy,
remember, what's that?
Kathy, my sister Kathy.
Yes, Kathy. I think she just designed the noose for the drumhead, if I'm not mistaken.
You're absolutely right. Actually, she named the band, and I had lost this picture, but evidently somebody else took one right at around the same time,
Oh my gosh.
right?
Look,
So here you are with the microphone.
look at that.
Dave Brooks, there's the Oxbow incidents,
Oh, in
Kathy.
front of the fireplace up at the camp.
Yep. John Holscher,
Nice picture.
me, and Bob Wiegand.
Wow.
And if you can see this computer screen behind me,
I can?
that's the same picture.
Nice.
So when I had a scrapbook, and that was the only picture I had of the band. My moving van was hijacked when I moved back to Muscle Shoals. So I was really distraught and asked around for years, and nobody from the ECC, because it's 1970 and beyond, and we were, gone, kind of. And recently, all of a sudden, somebody posted it. And I thought, holy smokes, this is the same picture I had from the same session. My picture was a little centered, a little bit better. Um, but I talked to John because I remembered he had a Fender basement. And we knew we were taking a picture. So we put the basement up front. And my crummy little amp was down here. But and then we put Bob's organ sort of up front, so it looked like we had good equipment. And you were there with the microphone, but there was no PA. But your voice was so strong, you could get away with pretty much singing in the rooms we were playing without a microphone. I don't know if you recall that, but
I do. It hasn't changed. My voice is just as loud. It's not any better, but it's just as loud.
uh-huh, yeah.
And I always loved the songs where you could scream, because I could make my voice go that far.
Yeah, you were a screamer. You were good.
Yeah, that was it. That
Really
was it.
good.
But the times down at Rumstick Point were just, I thought they were really the best times for all of us.
Yeah.
It was a great place to practice. Your house was so warm and inviting. Um, and at the time, I didn't know Rumstick Point from my house, or my street, but um, the houses there were pretty spectacular. And you were right on I think, a small sound or a river.
Narragansett Bay was the backyard.
Yeah, that was right. Yep.
And actually, it turned out in 1959, when my dad got hired by Brown University and he went on a quick tour of looking for homes, that house was for sale for, I think, 29,500. And it was somebody's summer home, some rich person from New York or something. Um, well, mom, after I think moved out, she couldn't keep it up. So we had to sell it. And the last time I checked, which was many years ago, but it was 2.5 million on
Wow.
Zillow.com.
Yeah, well, location, location, location. My gosh. Well worth it. For all
Yeah,
the memories it probably holds too. Well worth it.
yeah, yeah. We'd play on a Friday night, and then we'd goof off a little on Saturday, and we'd play Saturday night, and then everybody's parents would come pick them up on Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
just like camp.
Well,
But that how good that was. Oh
it
my
was
gosh,
like a
how good was
boys'
that?
club being in the band, wasn't it?
Yeah, indeed. It was great to be in the band. It gave you an affiliation. And back then when I think about it, when people say, you ever been in a band or anything? I said, yeah. I said it was a band that was a garage band before the term was coined. Um, Garage band came about in 1974. I looked it up because I was really curious. Um, and so we were one of the original garage bands, as far as I know. But what a great time! I mean, what were the groups? I mean, it wasn't the Everly Brothers or Elvis Presley anymore. It was the Rolling Stones, it was the Beatles, it was the Dave Clark Five, all these great groups. Um, and everybody wanted to be in a band, but we were lucky. We got in a band.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you remember, but we were pretty classy because we had suede boots.
Do you remember the day we all went to Fry Brothers in Providence and we bought the suede dingo beetle boots?
Yep. Oh my gosh, yes.
All right.
Oh my gosh, yes, I do.
And
I
we,
we were and we picked our own colors, I think. I
yeah.
Mine was like a cranberry or maroon color. And
Uh-huh.
I just thought I was the coolest guy that ever set foot in Providence, Rhode Island. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I do. Did we also go through a time, it may have been when we were the Seagram Seven, but we had like striped t-shirts similar to what the Beach Boys.
Right. So it was the Oxbow incidents, and we decided, okay, we need a uniform. We need a winter uniform and a summer uniform. Our winter uniform was powder blue shirts, those black knit ties,
Yep.
and blue blazers and blue jeans and our boots. And then the summer outfit, we ditched the blazers and the shirts, and we had blue and white Beach Boy shirts,
That
and
was
that
it.
was our summer look.
That's great.
So we'd
Yeah.
play the yacht club. Uh, do you remember the Edgewood Yacht Club?
Edgewood Yacht Club. Yes, I do. Yep.
One night actually we played there a couple nights, and one night somebody rushed the stage and tried to get up on it, and I was wearing moccasins, and I believe I kicked him off the stage as he was mounting the charge. I think I was wearing some John Lennon granny octagon glasses or something. Um, but I got the number of the beautiful, she was probably Italian, girl, just voluptuous. And I said, how about a date? And she said, okay, call me. And it might have been the following weekend and we weren't playing. So she said, well, you can pick me up at the yacht club. And I said, okay. And then I thought, geez, how am I going to pull this off? So I called Bob and he said, look, we've got a motorboat off Barrington Beach and we'll just take the boat. And so we took
Great.
Bob's family speedboat out to Edgewood Yacht Club. We brought her back to Rumstick Point and we partied for a little while, but she was kind of underimpressed by. And she said, is your friend going to stay here? So
Should have said
I,
it's my dad.
yeah, I think we actually called her a taxi to take her home.
It's too bad it ended like that. Oh my.
Yeah, but
It,
we Bob's parents had a party and he had stole some wine and it was in green bottles and we were out one Saturday night after practice just kind of walking around and drinking this crummy green wine. Oh man, so we played a lot of gigs. We had every Episcopal church gig automatically booked. Grace Church in East Providence, and
yep.
uh,
I think Grace Church in Providence too.
yeah. Do you recall we were playing a gig and Gary Aldrich, who was king of the surf guitars, and in fact Dick Wassard and um, this singer who I keep wanting to say his name was Brad, but I can't remember. But he was from camp. They started the band with Ed Riccio on the drums, and we were
Oh,
playing. It was right when the cuckoo choo, I am the walrus
Yeah.
was out, and Gary stopped by, and we let him do Surfing USA or something, and he played the one song, and he always had his hair was really long in the front, and he had to keep throwing it back like that, and Bob said, "Well, Gary's got to rush off to a surf meet in Hawaii. Thanks for stopping in."
That sounds like him. Oh my gosh.
It was funny.
Oh, I do.
What were some of well, what was it like in high school being in a band? For like the kids sort of knew you and they knew you were in a band. Did it make you feel special and just
It
kind of
did. In a funny way, because at North Providence, where I went, um, it they had a rule that you couldn't wear your hair long. That if your hair touched the collar, you were going home until you got your hair cut and came back.
uh,
So a bunch of us thinking, okay, we can out cool these guys. We let the front of our hair grow long, which made us look like turkeys. But eventually, with the conformity and everything else, more and more kids tried to get away with longer hair because they wanted to be part of something that their parents weren't part of.
yeah,
And that made it cool there. There was a band that had played at an assembly 2 years before we got the Oxbows together, and Charlie Pinto was the lead guitar player in the band, and they played the assembly, and I had never heard live rock and roll music before um, until I heard him and his band. And I'm not sure how good they were, but I will tell you, every kid in that auditorium was up, standing, and moving around. And eventually, the principal, Tom McGovern, got up and said, "We've had enough of this. Thank you very much," and kind of ended the assembly. And that kind of made it a little more outlaw than it needed to be, and it helped. And I wanted to be on that part. I didn't want to be part of the duplicating staff. I wanted to be part of the protesters. So
out
I
on the
it's what
fringe.
yeah, exactly. But it people would say, "How's your group? Where are you playing?" Of course, we played at my church, St. James in North Providence. We also played down at St. Martha's Home, just down the street, which was an orphanage for older kids. Um, and that just kind of people just it wasn't a worship type of a thing. It's just, I want to know more about you.
Mm,
Up until that time, people didn't really care about each other, but then they did because this was cool and the band was cool.
yeah,
And to this day, I still believe that. And, one of the things that really kind of helped too, you introduced Gloria, which, had we gotten the jump on The Shadows of Night, we
yeah,
would have recorded it because it was Van Morrison and them.
yeah.
But you knew that and you picked that out. And when I heard that song, I said, this is without a doubt the coolest song I have ever heard. And it was on an album called Here Comes the Night.
Yeah.
And that song was on there. And I said, my God, this guy Morrison is good and them are good. Um, which doesn't sound grammatically correct, but them are good. We're good.
Yeah.
Um, and then I remember in that counselor's room at ECC, I almost want to say it was 1967. You came in and said, "Wait till you hear this." And you had Jimi Hendrix's Are You Experienced album. And you had the biggest goddamn grin on your face. And I'm thinking, oh, this should be good. And then oh my God. And then I think we went over to the chicken coop, which is John Armitage and somebody else they were working in the kitchen, but they had the best stereo system in the camp. And we
Right.
put it on, and it was the most amazing change in music I had ever heard in my life. I said, oh, this is where it's going. This is perfect. Just perfect.
The
So,
boudoir.
but you knew, not only did you play really great music, um, but you knew good music, and you had you had this blues kind of soul. I didn't know what to call it, but what you could play was beyond belief. But what you liked was even better because it almost got to the point where it says, if he likes it, I like it. Do you like that, Howie? You know, and that's, but you were, you just had that ability to say, this is, and you knew why it was a great song. I didn't, except that you liked it. And I'm thinking, I'm going to listen. And I did.
That's pretty cool. So a group that I was in 1969 had a kid named David Hayes from Dighton, Mass. And after our last group job at the at the Barrington Yacht Club, which we co-billed with the Ascots, Dave went to California with Vinnie Medbury, their organ player, and he slept on Mount Tamalpais for 3 months in a sleeping bag, but got a job with playing with Jesse Colin Young and the Youngbloods.
Oh my gosh.
And then after that, he became Van Morrison's bass player and is still with Van today.
How do you like that?
Uh,
Wow.
so he's a guy who was, like us, that really made the big time. And anytime Van would come by, Dave would get me and my wife tickets and would go backstage and visit and uh, like that kind of stuff. Back to the band. We had mostly the church gigs to start. Then we got that fraternity gig and we started getting other fraternity gigs. They had a big red rug in there one night, and I was wearing a top hat. And Dave said, this rug would be great for practice and playing at gigs. and, and it was the same night Summer in the City was out, and they were calling for it. And Bob did the intro, and Dave, but we didn't know it. But everyone was too drunk; they didn't care. So when we packed up, we walked out, and we had the rug rolled up with the hat on it. We're like, "Come on, Bob, we'll get you to the car." And
Oh,
then about a week later, and we get a call. Hey, you guys didn't have to see that big red rug that was. Oh yeah, I think it. Yeah, I think we must have loaded that out by mistake. We'll drop that off.
yeah. And did we give it back to him?
Yeah, we gave it.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Um,
Honest
I,
kids.
I was talking with Bruce McRae once uh, when he got us a job at Tolman High School, and he said the Oxbow incidents, they they always had a lot of cool girlfriends and sort of cool entourage and stuff. But when we got up there and we were playing sort of Yardbirds and stuff, the people didn't quite know what to. I don't know if we liked these guys or not. And then Bruce came up and played harmonica on something, and then everybody said, "Okay, this is totally cool,"
Yep.
and we finished it
Indeed.
out.
But
It,
you think back on the girlfriends that we had back then. You know, a lot of them we met at camp, but I think because of the group, I was way out of my class. I went out with Elaine Carolla.
Elaine, yeah,
Yeah, and I'm thinking, yeah, this ain't. She's getting the raw end of this deal. I'm telling you. Um, but I think it had a lot to do with it. Oh, you're in the band. You're
yeah,
with the band.
yeah,
So
yeah.
nice perk.
Yeah. Uh, a friend of mine who lives in New Hampshire is a great singer, and we met in Hollywood. Uh, and we hooked up, I don't know, 20 years ago or something. I was in Boston, and we had seen Dave Hayes and Van Morrison, and I thought, oh, Mark Aubin, he's up here in Franconia or just somewhere. And so let's go see him. So we went up, and he said, so you're married now, right? And I said, yeah, of course. And he said, well, how come you're still playing music? And I said, what? He said, well, I thought we just joined a band to get girls. I said, Mark, well, that was
He's
part
right.
of it. Yeah.
He is so right.
you know, but the music. But when you're in high school, you get your choice. There was a girl named Donna Hume who became Miss Rhode Island, and she was from, I don't know if it was Lincoln, I think Lincoln. And I took my mom's little red helmet and we went over. We were going to the movies, and her dad was like a Marine drill sergeant.
Oh,
Of course, he didn't like me, and he was grilling me and where are you going and this and that and the other thing, and you'll be back by this time. And so we're at the movie, and of course the back seat flipped down. It was completely flat, and we're in the back and we're tussling around, and somehow her shirt came off, and her bra came off, and we're kissing and fooling around, getting all hot and heavy. And then I thought, her dad's gonna kill
yeah.
me. So we finished the movie, didn't go all the way, and I dropped her off and said, "Man, I really like you, but your father scares the hell."
I bet you she heard that a great deal.
Yeah, that's when I came up with my one date rule. I,
Good
I
rule to
can
live by.
I can only go out with you one time because I might get too attached, and music is my life. So
Okay.
so make this night right.
Just how many times did you use that line? Just out of curiosity.
Oh, geez, I don't know. Um, uh, Once or twice.
Once or twice, yeah.
Yeah. So, what are some of the gigs, or driving to some of the gigs and the antics that we used to do? Where did we have the Volkswagen bus then, or were we still going in the greenhouse truck?
I think we had the greenhouse truck. I think there was the Volkswagen bus, and I know in the beginning, I know we had Dick Lassard's uh, Plymouth, because I remember a time driving down Rumstick Point into the town, and Dick was in no shape to drive. I mean, he kept on asking me, "How am I doing?" I was like he was. I thought, "You're doing fine." But somebody in the back seat kept on saying, "Get me out of here." And they left. They got out of the car to walk. So we had that. But a lot of times I think we just packed up the greenhouse truck and off to the gigs we went.
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I do remember a time we were coming back from camp. We were in the greenhouse van. Holscher was driving, and Tony Lamarana and his mother, who had a Ford Falcon, were parked at the light up in Greenville. And John said, "I think I can squeeze between the curb and Tony's car." Took out the tail light and then just kept on going. So didn't think much of it. I thought it couldn't have been that bad. Well, needless to say, Tony and his mom were waiting for us at the camp on Sunday when we came back. And we did a pretty good amount of damage with that truck. The greenhouse truck didn't look bad, but Tony's car looked terrible.
Oh man.
Never buy a Falcon,
Yeah, really. Um,
but it was a
yeah.
wonderful truck. And I remember we got stopped because of John's truck once. We were driving in a fairly exclusive area, and I'm not sure why we were. I can't remember if we were on the east side, which shouldn't have been too strange, but we were someplace else where they had police patrolling a fairly exclusive community in Rhode Island. And so we got pulled over. Holscher was driving. And you and I think Bob and Dave may have been there too. And they wanted to know what we were doing. And, I felt like I wanted to be indignant and say, "What's it to you?" But I'm glad I didn't. Because he said, "You're from Johnston, Rhode Island. What are you doing out here?" Now, I wondered if a cop ever stopped people in Johnston, Rhode Island from like Newport and said, "So what are you doing out here in Johnston?" I guess it didn't work that way. We talked our way out of it, but I do remember that we had all been drinking um, at the time, not heavily. I
Yeah.
don't, or maybe we did. I don't think it was though, because John was driving, and he was responsible. So
Yeah.
good guy to have.
Yeah, yeah. There was one job we played, and there were a couple of bands on the thing, and it might have even been North Providence High School because the Ye Druids were on
Oh,
the
the Druids,
show.
yeah.
The Rubidoo brothers, I think, Tommy and Jimmy, one played sax. They reminded me actually of the Black Crows.
Wow.
Yeah, because they had the tall, skinny singer and the guitar player brother. Um,
Now, did we ever play at North Providence when the others played? Do you remember the others?
I do remember them. Uh, this story might catch your attention.
Okay.
We were in the parking lot, and somebody let you drive their car, and I was sitting in the back seat, and you were doing donuts and spinning around and all this and the other, and all of a sudden the blue light, holy shit. And the policeman said, what's going on, son? And you said, oh, just had a couple of kinks in it. I was just trying to, flush it out, blow off a little carburetor dust or, some lame ass. And the guy said, oh, you been drinking? No, no. And then the guy said, well, let me see your license. And you said, oh, I don't drive. Because you were only 15 and you didn't have a license.
Yo,
Is any of this coming back?
it is. It is indeed. One of the saving graces about being in North Providence and a volunteer fireman is that the police kind of help you get out of tough situations that could have been really troublesome if you went home. So they always, if you had a wallet, I may not have even had a wallet, but you always wore your badge. When you opened your wallet, the first thing they would see would be your fireman's badge. Um, and many times you knew the cops anyways, and they knew you. But I think in that particular instance, I had no idea. It was probably a guy out of the Maryville office. Um, but as I recall, there was no penalty.
No, he let you go. He just to give you a swift kick in the butts and watch it.
Yeah, and it was back then you couldn't say, "Hey, I'm with the band. You're not going to bust me, are you?"
Yeah. Hey, we're with the band.
Come on.
And
Yeah.
yeah. Well, you guys owe us $275 for beer. Well, we kind of figured after the first one that it was complimentary. No. Well, let us go get some traveler's checks out in the car, and we'll be right back.
Back in those days, now it's gift cards. Yeah, go get some gift cards at Walmart.
Yeah.
Yeah, you wonder sometimes too, is there a legacy of bands still around that go through like the same channels that our bands went through when we were just trying to get recognized, get gigs, and get a little bit of pay? Or is it all different now? Is everything on TikTok? Is everything on the web? I don't know.
Geez. The musician was always the lowest guy on the totem pole, really. I mean, because if you had a manager and then a management company and a record company, all this, and so your share looks like, oh, it's between the chiclets and the erasers. Hey, it's a scam. Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
All right. So there's really no money in it at all. Even I mean, probably in 1989, 90, 91, 90. No, wait a minute. I'm rough when I get on these years, but it was 1999, 2000, 2001, 2002, and 3. I got a good team behind me, and I started my own record company. And my first blues release was Spirit of the Blues.
Oh, nice.
And it won Blues CD of the Year award by an independent music group. But we had gotten to where we headlined the Coca-Cola Riverwalk Festival for 200,000 people. It was 6 lanes of highway that they had blocked off. They put the stage right in the middle, and it was 1 mile deep down to the river. And we were the headliner. And this monstrous ocean of people was about 50 feet off from the stage before we hit the first note. And Raymond Victor, who was a great piano player, Chicago bluesman, met in LA. He starts off,
Woke up this morning with my dick in my hand. I said, Lord have mercy, I'm a lonely man. Whoa, gotta live up.
a sea of people surged forward. I mean, it was like an ocean of people. They wanted to be right up at the front. They said, I don't know who this is, but I like it.
Isn't it funny though how that kind of a song? I remember with a band early on, we did Louie Louie, and
Oh yeah,
everybody
yeah.
wanted to know, are they using which lyrics are they using?
Hmm.
One by the Kingsmen or the original one?
Yeah.
Uh,
Uh,
and
y-
they always seemed to just have that knowing smirk and smile when they realized we were doing the Kingsmen's version of it, or what might have been the Kingsman version. Every time I listen to it, I don't think I ever hear the words I sang.
yeah. We were at some dance or party, and it was like at a basement level, and I had just gotten a $40 Ampeg reverb unit from Tony and Jenny Rhode Island Music, and we went into Louie Louie, and I had that solo, and it didn't play it very well, um, but you always had the right filthy lyrics. I see my bone in her. Uh, and you look on YouTube and you can see the Kingsmen doing it. And they've got these yellow sort of beret caps, and they're doing a little dance to each side, and it's pretty funny. But the guitar player was good. He played a good solo. And when you sang it, you always knew the filthiest lyrics.
I think it helped with credibility. Although I do remember once at ECC, um, we were playing. I think we set up the play early in the morning, and I think it was not authorized by anybody. It was just one of
That's
those last day of camp gigs, and
Mhm.
we set up in the barn and started to play. And then I said something like, "And for the last song, this is something we hope you get all year." And um, Canon Shoemaker came out of nowhere. He was like a ghost. His feet weren't even moving. It was sort of like Dracula coming up to the front saying, and he looked at me and said, I'm watching you. And so fortunately the song was good loving and that worked out okay. But if it
Yeah.
was, I wouldn't be here today.
Yeah. No, I know. That's pretty funny. We had an extended family. The band, we all loved each other. We were all best friends. We had a common goal. We wanted to be as famous as the Beatles or the Stones. And it's very hard to find five people that align that way these days. Because everybody, if they're any good, it's how much is the pay, and all this other stuff. But it's not like, okay, we'll be in a band and we're all going for it together, and we split the trials and tribulations and like that. Later in life, for me as a band leader, you take it all on your shoulders, and you might have a $4,000 weekend where you fly up to Ocean City and open for the Temptations, and then fly out to Green Bay and play at Bay Fest there, and drive over to Lambeau Field and look at the thing, and come back, and at the end of the thing, the payroll for the weekend is 4,000, and fortunately, I sold like 50 CDs, so I had 4,500. So I paid everybody, and then I got $500 from selling the records. Uh, did we record anything for the Howie Holland show? Didn't we try and record something? Or
I think
we were going to Myron Arnold's Crown Hotel, but maybe we never got around to it.
not to my recollection. Nope,
Uh-huh.
not to my recollection.
Okay.
And that may have been after me too.
Yeah,
So
could have been. Jim Mitchell told me that Dave's two sons didn't really know a whole lot about him. And so I'm hoping that they'll watch the video and get a little feel for it. But there was one time after you had left the band, and we were playing at the University of Rhode Island. And Dave's girlfriend, Sue Schoenfaber, was in the van with me. And they didn't really like the way I was driving. And it was on those curves uh, going up towards Seekonk, and there was that mobile refinery. It was past
Oh yeah.
WICE or something. And there was a mobile station on the corner. And Dave and Sue were complaining. And I said, okay, get up. And I opened the door and let them out at the mobile station, and drove on down to Kingston to the URI. And they showed up about 5 minutes later. They called somebody from Barrington, and they came right away and picked them up. They were right behind me. But
That's a
sometimes
great story.
I would get a little reckless sometimes. We were, me and Bob and John Holscher, I think, and probably Dave, we're driving through the east side, and we were trying to find some hash. And Susan Schoenfaber was getting kind of concerned about it. And she says, I don't know, boys. This is all this really worth it? Because what could happen? And Bob says, well, that depends on how good the hash is. She's thinking about the police.
Of course.
You're thinking about
Not a concern for the group, that's for sure.
So do you remember our first battle of the bands at the South Providence YMCA?
Yes.
The winner was the Untouchables. They were we were terrible, We were driving up. Bob's mom was driving us, and a couple of guys from the ECMF motorcycle drove by us, and Bob's mom goes, Bobby, what does ECMF mean? Bob, East Coast Motorcycle Fraternity, Ma.
Yeah, good boy, Bobby.
Right up. So we got totally smoked at the Battle of the Bands. I mean, we were playing the Batman theme song and the Alka-Seltzer commercial and House of the Rising Sun, and and then these Italian guys come out with black derbies, these white shirts with ruffles, and these leopard skin vests, and black peg pants, and the back pointed shoes. And they came out and came in right into Secret Agent Man, that and the crowd went wild, and of course they won. It was the only legitimate song that anybody played all day. But that was driving home. That's when I said, okay, we need uniforms, we need a PA, we need equipment, we got to get organized. And at one time, we had 100 songs on our set list. And I believe Kathy had a copy of it somewhere. And it's we knew a lot of songs. We didn't necessarily play them very good, all of them, but we were really good at Animals and Kinks and Stone.
Yeah, and you kept abreast of everything that was coming out. I remember when Get Off My Cloud had just come out.
Hey, you beat it.
Oh my gosh, that's so true. I remember doing that. But you were right on top of it. You said that's a song for us right there.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard it through the first time, and I'm thinking, really? But I had enough faith in you to know that you were right, and it was one of our best songs.
Yeah, we did it good. We did it real good. I always liked guitar solos, of course. To me, the song was just an excuse for the solo. So I never really cared much about singing or lyrics or anything. It was all just a setup to get to the solo. And so when Jeff Beck and Eric Clapton and Jimmy Page, they all came out of the Yardbirds. Right. And I knew these guys were the best guitar players in England, plus Hendrix, who I met when I was 15 in the Village on one of my wild weekends. I just followed what those guys were doing because I knew that's where the next 10 years was going to be.
But you knew that. You had that foresight. You know, I remember taking a trip during, I think, the 4-day break. Remember the great 4-day breaks we would get once in a while at the camp?
Yeah.
And we were heading to New York City, and I went with Rod Chase and somebody else. And on the way down, back then it was all AM radio,
Yeah.
WICE, WPRO, and if you got Boston, you got some Boston channels. And I remember the Doors had come out and would light my fire. And the AM version was very short. It was like 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes probably. And we're driving, and I had found a station in Connecticut as we were going down. And I had gotten so lost in the song that was on. I said, "What song is this?" They said, "Oh, it's Light My Fire." I said, "No, that was a while ago." And it was the instrumental part of the long version. And I said, "This is what's going to change. This is going to happen." And I thought this was the first song that I remember that had that extended, beautiful instrumental part to it.
Yeah.
And it was a great piece.
Right, because they'd cut everybody's solo off, like in "Sunshine of Your Love." They'd do the last 8 bars of it, you know, or
The
whatnot.
beauty of AM radio. Oh my God.
Were you with us in the winter when John had a car and it was a white one, and we drove to New York City on a whim? And I know it was Dave and John and me, and I don't know if it was Bob or you as well, but we went and I think we parked at St. Mark's Place, and it was freezing, and we were cutting through some park, and a Marine in a GTO drove by, and he saw us with hair, and he said, "I'll kill you in VC too." And we all took off running. And we were walking through the snow with moccasins and stuff, and the car had been towed away from our spot, and I think we pulled $67 together between all of us and got it out and drove home. But on the way up, we heard, I believe it was Chain of Fools for the first time. And
The Aretha Franklin version.
Aretha Franklin, yeah. And the ironic thing was I ended up playing with the Muscle Shoals Swampers, who backed her up on that track.
Oh, no kidding. Wow.
Yeah, that was pretty wild. Remember when the Time magazine came out, or Life magazine, and they were talking about LSD, and we were all in the staff room. I remember Kay McDonald, lost touch with her, unfortunately, but they were all saying, "Well, would you ever take it?" And it's saying, you know, your babies would be deformed and all this kind of stuff. And it was like a big decision kind of thing. But I hitchhiked to Bob's after he had to leave the band because his dad got transferred to Northbrook, Illinois. And I was at Bob's house when the Wheels of Fire album came out. A friend of his named Marty came over with 2 hits of Orange Sunshine. And we were up in Bob's room and playing it. And I saw these little parade men and toys and Alice in Wonderland and fireworks, and just, I was hallucinating like crazy. But we didn't do any of that when we were in our early band days. We were pretty much straight till the end. A little drinking came in now and again. But
Yeah, I think that I remember very much so. But you know, there were a number of things that probably precluded that. I mean, I think when it first came out, everybody used terms like gateway drugs and stuff like that. But I remember one thing my mother was usually right about everything about me. She knew me better than I ever wanted her to. But I remember once she said to me, she was listening to Jack Jones on TV, Spike Jones's kid. He was a crooner. And she goes, "You know, the Rolling Stones and the Beatles will never last. This is music." And she was pointing to Jack Jones as he was singing. And I'm thinking, oh, Mom, if you only knew, if you only knew. And I think a lot of people back then said, how long can this go?
Yeah.
And I think people with the insight knew this was it. It's here. And you're either going to be part of it or you're not going to be part of it. I remember contests on WIC. I guess it was a WICE guy, not a PRO guy. And it was when the Beatles first came out, and afterwards, we came out. But who do you like better, the Beach Boys or the Beatles? And they would have a competition. You could have to send a postcard in.
Oh.
And I remember the number of kids that sent postcards in for the Beach Boys. And then it was the Beatles, because the Beatles kept on winning. And I'm thinking, somebody knows something about this group. And I remember the night, it was 3 weekends over the Christmas vacation, I want to say 1964, where they were on Ed Sullivan 3 weekends in a row.
Yeah.
And
February.
yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's right. It was the not Christmas, but it was the winter break. And I remember that when I saw them live, I said, that's what it is. And that's why I always liked the live part about what we did. There's nothing like that. There's just nothing like that.
No. My younger brother Kevin once said, Howie, I could put up $1 million, but never be able to walk on stage and do what you do. Yeah. And yeah, you're right. People, Sue Schoenfaber, going back to her, should say, yeah, this rock and roll is fine, but what are you going to do when you're 40?
Yeah.
Because rock and roll itself wasn't 40 years old.
That's right.
So nobody had ever been a 40-year-old rocker,
All virgin territory.
Yep.
All virgin territory. My
God. But to me, when I go up on the porch with my acoustic and I try and play and sing something, it's a spiritual thing. It's like open channel D to God. And the expression of music is pure love. And that's what the world needs critically everywhere, is more love, and so I try and spread it as much as I can through the music. I'm getting old, some days I don't even feel like playing a D chord or something, but other days I might play a half hour or so. Last night I had an Allman Brothers concert and I played to their first 3 albums, and that was a lot of fun. And I said, oh, I remember this lick. This was a good one. I'll remember that.
But where did you draw? I mean, I looked at your discography. My God, the stuff that you've created. Where's your inspiration from? Because you were like nonstop. It was almost like, did you ever have a lapse?
I had a few lapses where I tried to be married and a good dad and have a good home life and stuff like that. And none of it lasted. The only thing that lasted was the music. But all the time, I've got so many notebooks, Paul, going back to the beginning, and it's amazing how many recurring themes I have, and it might come out in one way or another. I'll give you an example. In Hollywood in 1973, I wrote a song called Blue Morning Sun. Had a great chorus, but no real verse or anything behind it. I was playing in Memphis in 2018, and my sister Marcy called me and said that my brother Steve had just passed away from cancer. And so as I was walking down the road, I started getting ideas.
Well, now I took my band to Memphis to play some down home blues. Yes, I took my band to Memphis to play some down home blues. When the telephone rang, I got the very worst news.
and go into a solo.
Wow.
But
Boy, that was sensational.
but I held on to the chorus for 40 years before I had the story to hook it to. And then sometimes my wife Kaylin will say, "Boy, that sounds like another song of yours." And I said, "Well, I can plagiarize myself. I look at John Fogerty, the old man down the road."
Indeed.
Because you get good ideas, but maybe at the time it just wasn't recorded right, or it wasn't presented in the right thing, or I'll go back and look at some lyrics and say, I see what I was trying to say, but now that I'm older and been through this, I can tell this much better. Um, so when I first started writing, I used to think that all songs had to be true, from experience. And then I said, well, damn, I'm going to run out of real soon, interesting lyrics. So then I realized, okay, they don't all have to be true. They can be a combination of this truth and this and that, or anything. But I just have always been driven, that.
I
And
do.
so do you sing or play any blues or have a ukulele or anything?
No, I have harmonica and I have a diddly bow, and um, but it's fun. My son-in-law, who's a wonderful guy, started in a band, picked up the guitar on his own. My granddaughter plays French horn, plays trumpet, plays mellophone, is in a marching band. I think my taste in music is my family now, and my daughter just got a piano. She's she can remember stuff that just drives me nuts. She's so good. Um, Although, at one point we used to, if you remember at the conference center, we used to have the play at the end of the year.
And
And we
we
used
got to play it at the end of the year too. We picked up the square dances, the Friday night square dances.
that's right.
They moved them out and they moved the OBI in.
Yes, indeed. Yep. No more white silver sands for us. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Uh, so I do remember that. But when I started and I left Rhode Island to go to college in New York, I was originally in theater, and that didn't last very long. But I always wanted to write, and I always been jotting things down on a pretend thing that I always thought would be a fun play for Broadway with music, and it was just called Wrestling, and it was basically on the theme of three people that were professional wrestlers. One was a good guy persona who was a real cad. The other was the femme fatale who was the girlfriend of the good guy. And then there was the other guy who was the bad guy who was actually the good guy. And so I've been doing some music in my mind with that stuff. And you never know, I might put that back together.
Cool.
But I always thought it was easy to do lyrics. For me, it was always easy to do lyrics. But I often envied anybody like you who say, I think I have music that I can do. I've got these words and I can put this music to it. I wouldn't have the foggiest idea, but you could do that. You could do stuff that very few people can do, and you do it well.
Thank you, Tiny. I appreciate that.
Back
I'll
then.
tell you what, it's been too long, my friend. This was a really good catch up, and I'm sure I'll be thinking of about 50 other things that, I should have said this. We should have talked about that.
Yeah, me too. I've got a bunch of stuff I left right behind me because this was so much better spontaneous that I was going to touch upon. But this has been so good, and it's so great to see you again.
Yeah.
And my admiration for your talent, for you as a person, has never waned. I have always thought that, as a matter of fact, when I was at the radio station in Plymouth, and my buddy said, "Oh, I've got some CD." Oh, he always gave me CDs that the company would send out to play on the air, and it was your band, and I said, "Forrest McDonald." I said, "My God, that's Howie McDonald," and I started to just say, I was in a group with Howie McDonald. And, the guys I was with, the guy that was the disc jockey, Jay, and my buddy Jim said, "Yeah, I said, no, really. And so we went to the website, and lo and behold, you had the chronology of
Yeah.
your music, and there it was. And I said, read them and weep.
Yeah.
Very proud again once more. And then
Aces.
and then they said, this is a great CD. And I apologize because you've released so many, but and I think I've got about 4 of them. But it was sensational, and I was never so proud of being a musician. Oh,
That was my colorblind album.
yeah, that may have been it.
This is a fabulous album.
Yeah, well, you don't underestimate your other ones either.
Yeah, no, they're all good. Most of them are pretty. Paul, because it's so weird because I can't call you Tiny, so I have to like, I got to substitute something there.
No, you can throw anything
And
you
Bob
want. Tiny
Power
will
comes
work,
to mind so much, you know. So anyway, Tiny, we'll catch up more. I'm trying. John Holscher is totally camera shy. Dave is gone. Bob is gone. I guess it's just you and me, pal.
All right, buddy. Well, I'll be glad to be that representative, but maybe I'll give Holscher a call.
Lean on him. Lean on him. Say, John, we just want 10 minutes. and we could do a 3-way call.
We could do a 3-way Zoom.
Yeah. And that
would be fun.
That might help give him some incentive. So
I'll see what I can do.
All right. I'm going to try and also track down the other guys, some of them who came in later in life, to like Jim Carr, the bass player from Kansas City that moved in. He's available and still kicking. So it should be a great story. So I love you, man.
I love you too.
All right.
Be well, my friend.
Thanks, buddy. Have a great one. Thanks for showing up with me.
My pleasure, to say the least. I've enjoyed this.
Well, my friends, keep love in your heart, a song in your head, and I will see you down the musical highway on the next adventure of the old time rock and roller. So long, my friends.